In this video I'm going to give you a very simple outline of the circuitry of the hippocampus. Now you might remember that the hippocampus has this sort of classic shape where we have the dentate gyrus here. Let me just label that for you. And we have regions CA3, CA1, and an area called the subiculum. Now, let's start with the input. The input comes from the entorhinal cortex, EC. And this comes through a pathway called the perforant pathway. So fibers are coming in along here like this, and they come right up into CA3. All right, so lots of fibers coming along here. I'll just draw a couple of them. Now, in the dentate gyrus, you have neurons which receive inputs from this perforant pathway. So this input from the entorhinal cortex is called the perforant pathway. And they synapse onto these neurons in the dentate gyrus. And these neurons in the dentate gyrus project themselves up into CA1. Sorry, I mean CA3, not CA1. So they project up into the CA3, where we have neurons they synapse with. Let's make that a slightly different colour of red. They synapse with these neurons, and these neurons go off to, they have pathway going off to the anterior commissure, which is one of the outputs. Not sure if I spelt commissure right there, but never mind. But they also project along into CA1, where once again we have the next synapse. I'm doing too well with my colours here. Let's have a much darker blue here. And they synapse onto neurons in the subiculum. And these neurons are the main output, which go back to the entorhinal cortex. So there's actually two ways in which information gets from the entorhinal cortex. It can come in and synapse onto the dentate gyrus neurons, and they go to CA3 neurons, then to CA1, then to subiculum, then out. Or they can bypass that and synapse directly onto CA3 neurons, onto CA1, onto subiculum, and out. So here's a much more simplified way of looking at it, which is ignoring the basic structure of the hippocampus so we can just see what the actual circuitry is. So the important elements here are, first of all, you have the perforant path coming from the entorhinal cortex. You have an important synapse here. So synapse number 1 onto the cells in the dentate gyrus, which are called mossy fibres. They synapse onto CA3 neurons. So this is another important synapse here. And then, do you remember we said these CA3 neurons go off to the anterior commissure, but they also have a collateral called the Schaefer collateral, and they synapse onto the CA1 neurons, this synapse here. So these are 3 very important synapses. So this is known as the trisynaptic. So it's not come up very clearly on there, has it? The trisynaptic pathway. And this down here is the coming in from the entorhinal cortex. This synapse here is very important because here was where long-term potentiation was first described, the Schaefer collaterals from CA3 onto CA1 cells.